Mired in a struggle for economic supremacy and military domination of Asia. The US and China are now contesting the moral high ground as well. Beijing's released its latest brief on the human rights situation in America in response to a similar report from Washington. A reckless foreign policy, indiscriminate wiretapping and race-based rights were just some of the issues being brought up. RT's Alexei Rashevsky reports.
After years of swallowing accusations of violating human rights, Beijing is fighting back. Last year, the U.S. State Department issued its scolding human rights practices report. Now China held a mirror to Washington. The U.S. again accused China of limiting internet freedoms. The so-called Great Firewall of China, where Beijing has long been under scrutiny for blocking many Western websites such as Facebook, Google and YouTube. But those criticizing China are no saints. The innocuous-sounding PIPA, SOPA and CISPA bills to control internet data have made waves across the Atlantic lately. And the U.S. government approved interception of private text messages and emails for security needs are hardly contributing to online freedom. China's single-party political system and lack of democratic elections also came under fire. The Chinese report made a swipe back at America's multi-party system, saying that in what seems to be a democratic process, it's really not the people, but the amount of money spent on campaigns which really decides the winners. The largest part of the U.S. report was dedicated to human rights as they are today. From harsh labor conditions to poor salaries, indeed, China's status of being the world's factory is nothing new, and the cheap labor force concept has long been debated. Beijing hit back with a scathing claim that in the country where racism and discrimination officially do not exist, Afro-American and Hispanic employees earn 40% less than the white population in the United States, and that's to the glass ceiling for women who on average earn a 20% smaller salary than men. The U.S. report also lashed out at the treatment of prisoners and members of opposition in China. Contrast that with country which runs the notorious Guantanamo prison and the allegations of multiple human rights abuses within its walls, with China highlighting full statistics on all inmate deaths in U.S. prisons and the use of brutal force against peaceful demonstrators in 2012. It is no secret that China has a checkered human rights record, but by countering the claims of those who it believes should get its own house in order, it is quite clear that Beijing no longer wants to see a monopoly in the market of examining human rights.
RT's Alexei Rashevsky reporting there. And in the meantime, Eric Draitser, an analyst at stopimperialism.com, he says there is a link between those nations labeled rights defenders and those who are opposed to U.S. interests.
For the United States to talk about human rights, it's incredible hypocrisy when you have a massive hunger strike going on in the concentration camp known as Guantanamo, when the United States has engaged in violating the human rights of the people of Libya, of the people of Syria, of countless other nations around the world. The Chinese certainly have a lot to answer for in terms of their own human rights record, but we should also remember, too, that it is the United States which monopolizes control of international institutions such as Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, Doctors Without Borders, and so forth, which act as the arbiters of human rights, sitting in judgment of countries whether they are or are not violators. I'm not suggesting that there aren't good people who work within some of these organizations, or that the organizations themselves don't sometimes do good work, but often whatever the United States determines to be human rights violation is. Whatever the United States does is not a human rights violation.